This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. So, I don't think I have to say it to my audience. I don't think I have to explain this to you, but the presidency of the United States is a very serious job. One that should not be taken lightly. One that should not be entered into lightly. We have been suffering for the last 3 years under the yoke of a president who does not take his job seriously. From the very serious nature of his foreign policy job related to major global threats to domestic matters. And there has been no more obvious evidence, an example of it, as his handling of what is likely, or depending on the definition, already a pandemic with this coronavirus situation. The manner with which a president handles a pandemic is a very serious public health concern that doesn't just affect America and Americans and every individual family herein, but the world. And Donald Trump is abdicating his duty as president and steward of government resources handling it. Now, I don't want to be an alarmist, because it is very likely that everyone out there, the vast majority of you, are going to be safe. But I want to talk about exactly how Donald Trump has handled this, the two hats of Donald Trump, the showman who wants to whip up his crowds into a frenzy, and also the president who should be reassuring and giving us accurate information by which we can plan our lives and plan accordingly. First, I want to talk, I'm going to play a clip from the New York Times podcast, The Daily, with Michael Barbaro and a man named Donald McNeil, who is a science and health journalist. The coronavirus has been compared to the Spanish flu of 1918. They are saying that we know now that the coronavirus has about a 2 to 2.5% lethality rate. If you contract it, there is a 2.5% of people who contract it die. Those numbers are staggering, which really puts into light exactly how serious this is and why we need a president, why we need a leader, why we need someone who is sober and serious in handling this. Listen to this exchange from The Daily between Michael Barbaro and Donald McNeil.
Some big chunk of the country, 30, 40, 50%, are likely to get a new virus when it blows through. And if you don't get it in the first wave, you might get it in the second wave.
And 2% lethality rate of 50% of the country. I don't want to do that math. It's really, really awful.
It's a lot of people. It means, you don't die. 80% of people have mild cases, but you know somebody who dies.
It's pretty horrible.
Yeah. Right now, it's a smaller threat than the flu for us in the United States right now, but it could be a lot worse, and take that threat seriously. And that's what the CDC is saying too. Prepare.
Again, not to be alarmist, not to freak you out, but to give you data, to give you information that you can use looking forward for planning purposes. That if 30, 40, 50% of Americans contract the coronavirus and 2 to 2.5% will die from it, the population of the United States is 327 million people. If 50% of the people in America get it, that's about 163 million people. And if 2% of those die, that's over 3.25 million Americans that'll die from that disease, from the flu. And yet we have a president who has not taken it seriously. It's not even like he's looking at it through rose-colored glasses. This is someone who is not looking at the facts. He's still insisting that there's 15 people who have it. talking about how great a job he's doing. Watch this clip from the press briefing on at the end of February 26th, I believe, where he's downplaying the eventuality of what we're looking at. In the face of scientists telling him otherwise, he downplays it.
We're at that very low level, and we want to keep it that way. So we're at the low level. As they get better, we take them off the list, so that we're going to be pretty soon at only 5 people. And we could be at just 1 or 2 people over the next short period of time. So we've had very good luck.
At low level. Pretty soon it'll be 5. Maybe we'll get it down to 1 or 2 people. Well, now we know it's dozens and dozens and dozens of people who have it in the United States. 6 people have died from it. It's him not taking it seriously. At that same press conference, he has Dr. Anthony Fauci get up and talk about the likelihood and the timeline through clinical trials that we might see a vaccine for this. Donald Trump's right behind him. Watch him fidget. He can't sit still. He's not paying attention. I don't even know that he understands the words that are being said. Watch Donald Trump while you listen to Anthony Fauci talk about the possibility and the timeline of a vaccine.
Just a very quick update on the countermeasure development in the form of vaccines and therapeutics. I had told this audience at a recent press briefing that we have a number of vaccine candidates and one prototype one to give you a feel for the time frame of a vaccine and what its impact might be now and in subsequent years. Is that I told you we would have a vaccine that we would be putting into trials to see if it's safe and if it induces a response that you would predict would be protective in about 3 months. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. It's probably going to be closer to 2 months. That would then take about 3 months to determine if it's safe and immunogenic, which gives us 6 months. Then you graduate from a trial, which is phase 1 of 45 people, to a trial that involves hundreds, if not low thousands of people to determine efficacy. At the earliest, an efficacy trial would take an additional 6 to 8 months. So although this is the fastest we have ever gone from a sequence of a virus to a trial, it still will not be any applicable to the epidemic unless we really wait about a year to a year and a half. Now, that means 2 things. One, the answer to containing is public health measures. We can't rely on a vaccine over the next several months to a year. However, if this virus, which we have every reason to believe it is quite conceivable that it will happen, will go beyond just a season and come back and recycle next year. If that's the case, we hope to have a vaccine.
12 to 18 months. We might be able to get to clinical trial in 2 to 3 months. Then it'll go to a larger group of individuals to test the efficacy. But eventually, ultimately, we're looking at a vaccine in a year to a year and a half. And yet we have a president who does not bother to pay attention to the experts, to the scientists, to the immunologists, to the doctors. Here he is getting ready to go to a rally in South Carolina on the 28th. Listen to what he did not absorb from what you just heard. Listen to his word salad talking about the situation we're in with the coronavirus.
We're at the same number. A lot of people are getting better, very much better. The 15 number, plus we took it, as you know, from Japan. We took in some great American people and citizens, and they're getting better very rapidly. They're doing very well. All of them are doing well. The 15 people, likewise, we have them down to a much lower number. They're in good shape. Most of them are in really good shape. One of the people is, I wouldn't say not doing well, but it's very sick, but she's hopefully getting better. But we're at the same number. Essentially we've only had 15, and a lot of that's because I called it early. we made a decision very early to close up our borders to certain areas of the world, and we did that. And so we are hopefully getting lower from that number, but let's see what happens into the future. Some countries are doing well, some countries are not doing well. You can see that for yourself. And a lot of things are happening. We're very well organized. We have great talent, great doctors, great everyone. There's tremendous spirit, a lot of spirit. And as you know, with the flu, on average, we lose from 26,000 to 78,000 people a year, even more than that in some cases, some years. We haven't lost anybody yet, and hopefully we can keep that intact. There have been no deaths in the United States at all. A lot of that's attributable to the fact that we closed the border very early. Otherwise, it could be a different story. So we'll just keep doing a good job. We're ordering a lot of supplies. We're ordering a lot of elements that, frankly, we wouldn't be ordering unless it was something like this. But we're ordering a lot of different elements of medical. We are working on cures, and we're getting some very good results.
We're ordering a lot of elements of medical? How is that reassuring to anyone with more than a grade school education? Donald Trump has forfeited his duty as President of the United States. He is not in a position to keep us safe. Here he is on March 2nd in the cabinet room with a group of experts, again with Dr. Anthony Fauci, keeping in mind, I want you to listen to this, also keeping in mind what he has not absorbed from the several days prior. Still insisting that we're only a few months away from a vaccine. And listen for Anthony Fauci, who is up at the top right of your screen. Listen to him say, yeah, I've already told you this. It's the same thing I've been telling you.
So you're talking over the next few months, you think you could have a vaccine?
Correct. With phase 2.
Yeah, you won't have a vaccine. You'll have a vaccine to go into testing.
Phase 2, yes.
And how long would that take?
The phase 2 will take a few months before we can go into phase 3.
Oh, so you're talking within
A year, like I've been telling you.
Yeah. Well,
A year to
but
year.
Lenny is talking about 2 months, right?
And we would be there in June. We will be there in June for phase
In a couple of months.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I like the sound of a couple of months better, I must be honest.
But when you say June, phase 1 initiation though, right? In June?
Yeah.
Not a completed vaccine. That's what
Well,
this is.
it'd be a vaccine that would be ready for testing in phase 1. I don't think
Ready to
these
use,
vaccines
here's
we're talking about are completed
ready to use when, would you say? Ready to use?
on the public. I think it
For
depends-
next season?
So assuming that the vaccine is well tolerated, it's safe and efficacious, as John said, then I think the question is how do we work with the FDA to expedite that as fast as possible through some sort of fast track program to get it through phase 2 and 3 testing to get to.
Go quickly.
Who's reassured by that? Now listen, I talked earlier about Donald Trump having 2 hats, the showman, the reality TV game show host, and then the very serious president of the United States. It's a job he should be taking seriously. But in the wake of all of this, in the face of all of this evidence, of all of this very serious concerns that have been leveled by the entire international medical community, we have Donald Trump the same day that he was out there with the word salad. He was on his way to the rally. He goes to South Carolina and talks about the coronavirus pandemic as though it's a hoax.
This is their new hoax. But, you know, we did something that's been pretty amazing. We're 15 people in this massive country. And because of the fact that we went early, we could have had a lot more than that.
Disgusting. Unconscionable. You don't get it both ways. You don't get to be king of the MAGA morons and then president of the United States who wants to reassure her people that things are going to be okay. And that's not even to mention his son, who goes out and says Democrats want millions of people to die. Listen to this.
Are you surprised the way they've been handling the coronavirus situation, meaning Democrats?
Not at all. I mean, we've seen, like you said, we've seen this play out for 4 years. Anything that they can use to try to hurt Trump, they will. Anything he does in a positive sense, like you heard from the reporter that was just suspended from ABC, they will not give him credit for. The playbook is old at this point. But for them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so that they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness. You know, I don't know if this is coronavirus or Trump derangement syndrome, but these people are infected badly. To run that in the New York Times, this isn't Vox. This isn't one of these, crazy left-wing journalists. This is the New York Times writing this with seriousness. It's truly sick.
And then when questioned about that particular response, that particular allegation that he's leveling, Mike Pence says, it's understandable that Don Jr. says that.
A lot of unfortunate rhetoric on the left and on the right about the coronavirus. I want you to take a listen to something that the president's son, Don Jr., said about Democrats and the coronavirus just on Friday.
Anything that they can use to try to hurt Trump, they will. But for them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so that they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness.
Can we agree that neither Democrats nor Republicans want Americans to get the coronavirus and die from it? I mean, that does seem like it seems like very extreme rhetoric. I don't expect you to criticize the president's son, but you don't think that Democrats want people to contract this disease, do you?
Well, I think what the president said earlier this week, and his charge to me, is to remind the American people that the risk is low, to assure the American people that we're ready, but also to say, as the president said, this is no time for politics. And frankly, I think that was Don Jr.'s point, that there has been some very strong rhetoric directed at the president by some members of Congress and
you don't think that was
political
strong
commentators. Well,
he said seemingly Democrats want millions of Americans to die of coronavirus.
But responding to the kind of things that have been hurled is understandable.
Yeah. Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States of America. It's understandable that Don Jr. says that Democrats, that half the country, are rooting for millions of Americans to die. Ugh. Gross. More gross is the fact that Mike Pence has been put in charge of the government response to this pandemic. Listen to Donald Trump heap praise upon the science-denying kook, Mike Pence.
We're doing something else that's important to me because he's been terrific in many ways, but he's also very good on health care. And we really followed him very closely. A lot of states do. When Mike was governor, Mike Pence of Indiana, they've established great health care. They have a great system there, a system that a lot of the other states have really looked to and changed their systems. They wanted to base it on the Indiana system. He's very good. And I think, and he's really very expert at the field. And what I've done is I'm going to be announcing exactly right now that I'm going to be putting our Vice President, Mike Pence, in charge. And Mike will be working with the professionals, doctors, and everybody else that's working. The team is brilliant. I spent a lot of time with the team over the last couple of weeks, but they're totally brilliant, and we're doing really well. And Mike is going to be in charge, and Mike will report back to me. But he's got a certain talent for this, and I'm going to ask Mike Pence to say a few words, please. Thank you, Mike.
Mike Pence is no expert in these matters. Mike Pence is not even knowledgeable about these matters. Mike Pence is somebody who thinks that smoking, who has written in the past that smoking doesn't kill. To quote him, Mike Pence said, "Time for a quick reality check." Despite the hysteria from the political class and the media, smoking doesn't kill. That's who we have leading up the government response to what should be someone having vast scientific understanding, or at least vast respect for experts. Mike Pence doesn't believe that condoms are a good protection against sexually transmitted disease. He told Wolf Blitzer in 2002, condoms are a very, very poor protection against sexually transmitted disease. He also said that the only true safe sex is no sex. Yeah. He doesn't believe in evolution. He has been quoted as saying only the theory of intelligent design provides a rational explanation for the universe. He has said climate change is a myth. And actually, the planet is cooler than it was 50 years ago, which is in complete contravention and direct opposition to all scientific evidence. We know how hot the Earth is. We know the temperature. It's not cooler than it was in the 1960s, the 1970s. Mike Pence believes in praying the gay away. He believes in conversion therapy, which is illegal in multiple states across the United States. He was a proponent of withholding funding for AIDS research and AIDS support groups. And I'll read directly from what he wrote. Congress should support the reauthorization of the Ryan White Care Act only after completion of an audit to ensure that federal dollars were no longer being given to organizations that celebrate and encourage the types of behaviors that facilitate the spreading of the HIV virus. Resources should be directed to those institutions which provide assistance to those seeking to change their sexual behavior. This is the man who's in charge of the government's response to a pandemic. And his solution to a spike in cases of HIV while he was governor of Indiana is to pray on it. Let's pray about it. Because we know how well thoughts and prayers have worked for the AIDS epidemic. We know how well thoughts and prayers have worked for the gun violence epidemic in our country. Why not try it with this too? This is the man they put in charge. Anyway, I wanted to give you some resources. Again, I don't want to be an alarmist because there is really nothing to be alarmed about. But we should be following the science. We should be following where the data leads us. Wash your hands. 20 seconds, soap and water, breaks down that lipid layer of the virus, kills the virus. Take precautions. Be safe. And, pray if you're going to pray, but don't count on praying to be the thing that ultimately curbs the spread of this virus. All right? Mike Pence, clown shoe.